These are the most shocking and mysterious vintage photos and unusual objects from the past. Let's get 100,000 subscribers. Actor Reggie Nalder as the vampire Kurt Barlow in Salem's Lot, 1979. On the left is the horrifying effects mask with glassy eyes and fangs. On the right is Nalder himself. The design was directly inspired by the 1922 film Nosferatu and became one of television's most shocking vampire images. Children lined up for a 12-hour night shift in the United States, 1908. Many were as young as 8 or 9, forced to work in factories through the night. Such images later fueled the movement for child labor laws in America. Dogon stilt dancers in Bandiagra, Mali, 1970s. Their masks and costumes were part of ritual performances tied to ancestral worship. The towering stilts symbolized a connection between the human and spiritual worlds. Political cartoon from Harper's Weekly, October 26, 1861. Jefferson Davis is shown harvesting skulls with a sickle, symbolizing the deaths caused by the Confederacy. The vulture, noose, and serpent reinforce the image of death and treachery. Surreal photo, c. 1910. A man wields what looks like a giant severed head, made through early photo manipulation. One of the most disturbing photographic illusions of its era. Rare unauthorized photo of Joseph Stalin, 4:31 a.m., June 22, 1941. It captures the exact moment he was told that Germany had launched its invasion of the Soviet Union, one of the few images showing him visibly shaken. An abandoned Victorian house once used by artists. Its rotting wood, broken windows, and overgrown yard reveal decades of neglect. The structure now stands as a decaying relic of a past life. Leslie Caron as the Sphinx in Roland Petit's ballet La Rencontre, 1948. Her costume included clawed hands and pointed ears, creating an inhuman look. This striking image became one of the most haunting in post-war ballet. Bran Castle, Transylvania, 1920s. Known as the Dracula Castle, it was tied to Vlad the Impaler in legend. Its dark towers cemented its place as a symbol of fear. A baby in a wire cage hanging from a London apartment window, 1948. These baby cages, patented in 1922, were used to give children fresh air in crowded cities. The practice declined by the late 1960s due to safety concerns. Ceremonial mask displayed at the Field Museum in Chicago. Its design features a human face with arms extending from the eyes and head, a rare form of ritual art. Such masks were created to represent spiritual transformation and power. Sanitol tooth powder advertisement, 1911. The unsettling artwork shows a grinning child promoting the product. Early dental ads often used exaggerated imagery to attract buyers. Plaster phrenology bust, England, 1821. The numbered sections marked areas once believed to control human traits and behavior. Today it stands as a relic of pseudoscience. Anti-Camnia Pharmaceutical Company calendar, 1900. Illustrated by Louis Crucius, it shows skeletons preparing drugs in a pharmacy. The company used macabre imagery to advertise its products, despite growing concerns over safety. Final letter from miner Jacob Vowell during the Fraterville mine disaster, Tennessee, 1902. Over 200 men died, including his 14-year-old son, Elbert, trapped with him underground. The note was found beside their bodies after suffocation claimed the last survivors. Gavernous Passage Tomb, Brittany, France, built around 4200–4000 BC. Its walls are covered with intricate Neolithic carvings, among the most advanced of their time. The site is considered one of the oldest surviving monumental structures on Earth. Painted cast iron coin bank, c. 1890. It depicts a grotesque figure trapped in a barrel, with coins inserted through its open mouth. Such bizarre designs were once marketed as children's toys. Behind the scenes of The Shining, 1980. The twin actresses, Lisa and Louise Burns, share a moment with Danny Lloyd between takes. Off-camera innocence contrasts with one of horror cinema's most chilling scenes. Circus performer in Germany, Sidon in 1930, photographed by Kurt Triest. Her piercing stare and ornate costume captured the eerie glamour of interwar European circus culture. The image remains one of Triest's most haunting portraits. Still from the children's TV show, H.R. Pufnstuf, 1969. Known for its surreal costumes and bizarre characters, the series became infamous for its psychedelic style. It remains one of the strangest children's programs ever aired. Apache Ghost Dance Ceremony, photographed by Edward Curtis, c. 1906. The masked dancers carried wooden headdresses and crosses, moving in ritual meant to call on spiritual power. Curtis's image remains one of the most haunting records of the ceremony. Ventriloquist's Family Portrait, 1950s. The performer sits among lifelike dolls arranged as his children. The disturbing mix of humans and puppets blurs reality in a deeply unsettling way. Rich Bundy stands with his older brother Ted in the 1970s. At the time, Ted Bundy lived an ordinary family life, hiding his crimes from everyone around him. Within a few years, he would be unmasked as one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. Edna Tikhonor in the show, 1927, directed by Todd Browning. She played Arachnida the Human Spider, a sideshow illusion designed to shock audiences. Browning's use of grotesque carnival imagery cemented the film as one of the strangest works of silent horror. Photo from 1899. Two women stand with their backs to the camera, holding hands. The inscription reads, "Excuse our backs, our faces are dirty." Halloween costumes, 1920s. The masks were handmade from cloth and paper, giving them a distorted and eerie look. 1944, United States. A woman poses with a skull sent by her Navy boyfriend from the Pacific Theater. Human remains were sometimes taken by American soldiers during World War II as war trophies. The practice was later condemned by military authorities. Early 20th century tin and composition toys. Hand-painted figures include a clown, animals, and a child in traditional dress, likely German or Japanese imports. Such toys were common before World War II, but their fragile materials make surviving sets rare today. Hedy Pfundmeyer, Austrian dancer, photographed in 1928 by Rudolf Kopitz. She is shown wearing the Elektra mask, used in German expressionist performance. Boston, June 16, 1936. Sales meeting of the New England Baking Company promoting a Mickey Mouse bread campaign. Attendees wore identical Mickey Mouse masks during the event at the Hotel Sheraton. The campaign marked one of the earliest mass uses of Disney characters in food advertising. Advertising poster for Van Camp's Pork and Beans, c. about 1950s. The design features a porcelain clown doll presenting a steaming bowl of beans. Van Camp's was one of the first U.S. companies to mass-market canned baked beans as a quick meal. High school photo of Jeffrey Dahmer, early 1970s. Classmates remembered his disturbing pranks and obsession with dead animals. Less than a decade later, he began the series of murders that made him one of America's most infamous criminals. The Nicholas brothers performing their jaw-dropping jump-and-jive routine in stormy weather, 1943. No stunt doubles, no safety nets. Just raw athleticism, death-defying splits, and precision that still shocks dancers today. Historians call it the single greatest dance sequence ever filmed. On October 14, 1977, activist Tom Higgins hit Anita Bryant with a pie during a press conference. Bryant was leading the Save Our Children campaign, which overturned LGBT protections in Florida. The incident triggered a national boycott of Florida orange juice, ending her contract. Early 1900s rehabilitation device for wrist injuries, used after World War I. The patient's arm was strapped down while the hand moved against a metal wheel to measure flexion and extension. Such apparatuses were crucial in treating thousands of soldiers with combat-related injuries between 1914 and 1918. French family with gas masks in Merbach-Moselle around 1914 and 1918. During World War I, civilians were supplied with protective masks as chemical warfare spread beyond the front lines, threatening entire towns near battle zones. Tourists run as massive tsunami waves approach in Thailand, December 26, 2004. Triggered by a 9.1 magnitude earthquake, the disaster killed over 220,000 people across 14 countries. Anne Frank and her sister Margot, 1942. This is believed to be one of the last known photographs of them together before their arrest during World War II. November 24, 1963. Jackie Kennedy and her daughter Caroline stood at the casket of President John F. Kennedy in the U.S. Capitol. The casket was covered with the American flag. Thousands of citizens passed through the rotunda that day to pay respects. In 2014, actress Melora Rivera climbed onto her roof in Los Angeles to escape an intruder. Moments later, the man appeared directly behind her. Police arrived quickly and arrested him before harm was done. A mushroom cloud over Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, captured from the B-29 Enola Gay after releasing the first atomic bomb in warfare. This strike signaled the dawn of the nuclear age. Joseph P. Kennedy Jr., eldest of the Kennedy family, photographed in military uniform during World War II. He was a naval aviator who died in 1944 during a mission in Europe. Diane Odell contracted polio at the age of 3 and lived nearly 60 years inside a 750-pound iron lung, one of the few still in use after modern ventilators replaced them. She completed high school, took college courses by phone, and even wrote a children's book while confined to the device. In 1974, Ted Bundy drove a Volkswagen Beetle that investigators later tied to multiple disappearances in Washington state. The vehicle was eventually seized and examined for forensic evidence. Today, it is displayed at the Alcatraz East Crime Museum in Tennessee. Napalm strike during the Vietnam War, South Vietnam, 1966. The explosion created firestorms that consumed everything within seconds. U.S. ground troops are seen retreating from the blast area immediately after the drop. Bong Sun Plain, Vietnam, February 20, 1967. Soldiers of the U.S. 1st Cavalry Division burned a village after one of their men was killed by a booby trap. Such actions were used as retaliatory measures against guerrilla forces. This is an aerial photograph of Hiroshima, Japan, taken on July the 20th, 1946. The image shows the vast urban destruction that remained 1 year after the atomic bombing of August 1945. Large areas of the city appear flattened, with only a few structures left standing. This photograph shows the eruption of Krakatoa in 1883, one of the most powerful volcanic events in recorded history. The explosion killed more than 36,000 people and triggered massive tsunamis up to 150 feet high. Its impact caused global temperatures to drop by about 0.6 degrees Celsius for several years. This photograph shows Rustem Slobodin, one of the 9 hikers involved in the Dyatlov Pass incident in February 1959. The group mysteriously perished in the northern Ural Mountains under circumstances that remain unexplained. The case has since become one of the most enduring mysteries of the 20th century. Mike Tyson is photographed shaking hands with Dale Hausner, later identified as a serial criminal in Phoenix. Hausner posed as a sports writer to meet celebrities, including Tyson. Soon after this meeting, police revealed his responsibility for multiple murders. A Japanese kamikaze aircraft dives toward the USS Lexington during an attack on November 5, 1944. The carrier was struck but survived, sustaining damage and casualties among the crew. This was part of the intense air battles in the Philippines campaign of World War II. Harry R. Truman sits near Spirit Lake with Mount St. Helens in the background. shortly before its catastrophic eruption on May 18, 1980. Truman, who refused to evacuate his lodge despite warnings, was killed when a pyroclastic flow swept through the area. His death made him a symbol of the disaster that reshaped the Pacific Northwest. Jean Harlow, one of Hollywood's brightest stars of the 1930s, pictured shortly before she collapsed from kidney failure. She fell into a coma soon after and died on June 7, 1937, at just 26 years old. Her sudden passing shocked the film industry and marked the tragic end of a legendary career. A Mongolian man in a kangi, July 24, 1913. The wooden collar was used as punishment, restricting movement and preventing self-feeding. The image was captured with the autochrome process, one of the earliest forms of color photography. 5 Cantor Fitzgerald employees, photographed weeks before September 11, 2001. Sisters Lauren and Christina Georgentonio, center, were the only survivors. Jennifer Mazzotta, Lynn Morris, and Laura Angeletta lost their lives in the attack. Sharon Tate, pregnant, photographed while folding baby clothes. 3 days later, on August 9, 1969, she was murdered at her Los Angeles home by members of the Manson family. Douglas Spedden playing on the deck of the RMS Titanic, 1912. He survived the sinking, but died in 1915 at the age of 9 after being struck by an automobile. Last known image of Maura Murray, captured by an ATM camera on February 9, 2004 in New Hampshire. She withdrew money shortly before disappearing without a trace. Her case remains unsolved. Tulip of Morden, photographed in Queensland in 1926, was awarded as the champion cow in butterfat testing. Her high production results made her a key example for improving dairy breeding at the time. Oliver Reed, who played Proximo in Gladiator, 2000, died of a heart attack in Malta during a break from filming. Reports stated he collapsed after a night out in a bar with sailors while the movie was still in production. This photo shows him on set shortly before his death. Japan Airlines Flight 123 crashed into Mount Takamagahara on August 12, 1985, killing 520 people. It remains the deadliest single aircraft accident in history. The photo shows the plane at Haneda Airport earlier that day. The Dyatlov Pass incident occurred in February 1959 in the Ural Mountains, where 9 Soviet hikers died under unexplained circumstances. Their tent was found abandoned and cut open from the inside, with bodies discovered scattered in the snow. This photo is believed to be among the last taken during the expedition. Tom and Eileen Lonergan disappeared in January 1998 after being accidentally left behind by a scuba diving boat in the Coral Sea, off North Queensland. Their absence was not noticed until 2 days later when belongings were found on the vessel. Despite extensive searches, the couple was never recovered. A Malamute family in Alaska, photographed in the 1920s. They wear fur-lined clothing made from animal hides, suited for the subarctic climate. Princess Margaret sits in a bathtub, wearing the Poltimore tiara. The photo was taken by her husband Anthony Armstrong Jones in the 1960s. It captures a rare private glimpse of British royalty outside official settings. 2 patients at Walter Reed General Hospital practice engraving as part of occupational therapy. The program was introduced during World War I to aid recovery of injured soldiers. Washington, D.C., circa 1940 to 1918. American Red Cross personnel stand outside their detachment headquarters in England during the influenza epidemic, circa 1914-1918. The organization provided medical support to soldiers and civilians throughout the war and the global health crisis. Charles Lightoller, the most senior officer to survive the Titanic, clung to an overturned lifeboat before rescue in 1912. He later served with distinction in the Royal Navy during World War I, earning decorations for bravery. In 1940, using his yacht Sundowner, he personally evacuated 260 soldiers from Dunkirk, cementing his legacy as both a survivor and a rescuer. At Walter Reed General Hospital, wounded American soldiers were trained to operate film projectors as occupational therapy during World War I. The program provided rehabilitation and practical technical skills between 1914 and 1918. A World War I nurse supports a soldier's neck during rehabilitation, circa 1914-1918. These treatments were vital for restoring movement and preparing wounded men to return to daily life after severe injuries. The Lighthouse of Alexandria, built in the 3rd century BCE, stood over 330 feet tall until an earthquake destroyed it in 1303. Archaeologists have now raised 22 massive blocks from its ruins, some weighing up to 80 tons, including parts of its base and entrance. On May 15, 1948, Israel declared independence, leading to the Nakba, the expulsion of over 700,000 Palestinians and destruction of 400 villages. By 1949, Israel controlled 77% of Mandate Palestine. Nakba Day has been commemorated annually since 1949 and officially since 1998. Lower Yellowstone Falls, photographed during the 1871 Hayden Geological Survey, became one of the images that helped convince Congress to establish Yellowstone as the first U.S. national park in 1872. Aftermath of the Great Chicago Fire of 1871 at LaSalle Street in Washington. The fire destroyed over 17,000 buildings, caused around 300 deaths, and left more than 100,000 people homeless. Reconstruction of the city began almost immediately, reshaping Chicago into a major modern metropolis. Jenny Lester was arrested in March 1914 in Phelps County, Nebraska, and sentenced to 1 to 3 years in the state prison for enticing to illicit intercourse. She resisted arrest and later refused to cooperate with police photographers. Her mugshot was eventually taken, showing her in a defiant stance that reflected her refusal to submit. In 1901, F.P. Robinson paid off in a saloon on Douglas Street in Omaha, with a Mexican dollar that looked almost indistinguishable from the American dollar. Since the drink cost only 5 cents, he received 95 cents in change, and thus earned half a dollar. The deception soon came to light, and Robinson was arrested. In the 19th century, photographer William Mamler became known for his spiritual portraits, in which ghostly figures of the dead appeared next to the living. His photographs, popular in the era of spiritualism after the Civil War, are considered fake, but the method of their creation has not been fully disclosed. The cellar of the Ipadiev house in Yekaterinburg, where Tsar Nicholas II, Alexandra, and their children met their fate on the night of July 16, 1918. Bullet marks on the walls remain as evidence of the event that ended the Romanov dynasty. An Armenian man performs a traditional dance in the mountains, dedicated to his son who perished during the mass displacement of Armenians in 1915. The Ottoman government's deportations led to widespread loss and exile among Armenian communities. Bertha Lee Becke, nicknamed Fainting Bertha, became infamous in the Midwest for her unusual pickpocketing method. She pretended to faint and stumbled into well-dressed men, stealing their wallets as they rushed to help her. Arrested multiple times under different aliases, she earned a lasting reputation in police records of the early 1900s. The Anderson family posed for this portrait in Sweden on April 5, 1912, shortly before leaving for Canada aboard the Titanic. Parents Anders and Elfrida planned to emigrate with their 5 children, aged 2 to 11. All 7 members of the family were among the passengers who did not survive the disaster. The 1922 silent film Nosferatu introduced Count Orlok, a vampire inspired by Bram Stoker's Dracula. A lawsuit by Stoker's widow ordered all copies destroyed, but surviving prints spread worldwide, turning it into a cult classic of horror cinema. This photo, posted on social media during severe flooding in Texas, shows the inside of a truck as water rose around it. The driver, 21-year-old Darren Mitchell, was reported missing after the vehicle was swept away. His last online message read, "And all I wanted to do was go home." In December 1929, the Lawson family posed for a portrait after buying new clothes in town. Days later, Charles Lawson ended the lives of his wife Fanny and 6 of their 7 children on Christmas Day. The only survivor was his eldest son Arthur, who had been sent away on an errand before the tragedy. Adoption flyer from Saskatchewan, 1977, featuring Indigenous children. It was part of the 60s scoop, when thousands of First Nations children were taken from their families and placed in non-Indigenous homes without consent. Many lost their culture and relatives, a trauma still felt today. In 1967, Captain Bob Pardo's F-4 was hit while his wingman's jet was crippled and losing fuel. Using the tailhook, he pushed the damaged plane 88 miles to safety. The feat, later called Pardo's Push, saved all 4 men. Abraham Lincoln's loyal dog, Fido, stayed in Springfield when Lincoln left for Washington. After attending the president's 1865 funeral, he lived with family friends. In 1866, a drunken man fatally stabbed him, ending his life in the same tragic shadow as his master. Women in Britain during World War I coat aircraft wings with dope, a flammable chemical that tightened and strengthened the fabric. This dangerous work exposed them to toxic fumes daily, yet it was essential for keeping warplanes airborne. Ishi, the last known survivor of the Yahi tribe, lived in hiding for 44 years after settlers wiped out his people. In 1911, starving and desperate, he emerged near Oroville, California, at around age 50. In the 1930s, British poet Edward James turned his wife Tilly Losh's wet footprints into art. After seeing her steps on the stairs post-bath, he commissioned a custom carpet woven with her prints. A young man from Newfoundland, later killed in World War I, poses with his sister, who would die in the 1918 Spanish influenza pandemic. Their story reflects the double toll of war and disease that marked the early 20th century. The Hallaton helmet, discovered in Leicestershire in 2000, is a unique Roman cavalry helmet dating back 2,000 years. It is the only example found in Britain that still preserves much of its silver gilt plating. The station nightclub fire occurred on February 20th, 2003 in West Warwick, Rhode Island, during a Great White concert. Pyrotechnics ignited flammable acoustic foam, killing 100 people and injuring 230 within minutes. It remains the deadliest firework accident in U.S. history and the 4th deadliest nightclub fire overall. Over 1,000 years ago, the Zapotecs built Mitla, believing it stood above an entrance to the underworld. Spanish colonizers destroyed their temples, but archaeologists have now uncovered tunnels and a chamber beneath San Pablo Apostol, possibly the crypt of ancient kings. In 1937, mountaineers Bradford Washburn and Robert Bates abandoned cameras and gear on Canada's Mount Lucania. After 85 years, explorers located the caching on a Yukon glacier, uncovering still intact cameras with undeveloped film. These relics may soon reveal unseen images from one of history's most daring expeditions. A rare mid-1940s photo of Norma Jean Mortensen before she became Marilyn Monroe shows her natural look without Hollywood glamour. In 1993, Bruce Willis worked behind the bar at Planet Hollywood. The restaurant chain was founded by him, together with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. She quickly became famous due to the involvement of Hollywood stars. In 1940, Polish officer Witold Pilecki voluntarily allowed himself to be arrested in Warsaw in order to go to Auschwitz. His task was to organize an underground and transmit information about the camp to the Allies. Pilecki spent more than 2 years collecting data on Nazi crimes before he managed to escape. Flanders, 1917. An Allied soldier bandages the paw of a Red Cross service dog. These dogs were used to search for the wounded and deliver medical supplies to the battlefield. In 1972, 17-year-old Rowan Atkinson studied at the Faculty of Electrical Engineering at the University of Newcastle. He later continued his studies at Oxford, where he began performing in student theater productions. The latter three fire truck was among the first to arrive at the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001. The crew went up to the North Tower to evacuate people and died when the building collapsed. Filming of the 1960s Batman TV series. For the scenes on the water, a mock-up of a boat and a projection screen with a background were used, and splashes were created by special installations right in the pavilion. Such practical effects replaced computer graphics of that time. In the 12th century, Bologna had about 180 towers built by noble families. By the 21st century, about 20 had been preserved, and the Asinelli Tower, 97 meters high, remains the tallest. These towers served as defensive fortifications, as well as symbols of wealth and influence. In the 1950s, Soviet polar explorers fed polar bears at a station in the Franz Josef Land archipelago. Animals often approach people in search of food, which was recorded in photographs. Despite such scenes, contact with bears remained extremely dangerous. Horses used to transport supplies and artillery during the First World War often died from exhaustion, injury, and conditions at the front. In total, about 1 million animals were sent to the war, but only about 65,000 returned. In the photo, British soldiers try to pull a cart with a tired horse out of the thick mud on the Western Front, 1917. A Hungarian girl in wooden walkers from the early 20th century. This model was called Katie, and was a simple construction of 3 legs and a crossbar. It was used to support the child during the first attempts to walk. A makeshift house in Hooverville during the Great Depression in the USA, 1930s. People built such dwellings from improvised materials, boards, tin plate, cardboard, and sometimes billboards. Hoovervilles were entire settlements of the homeless, which got their name in mockery of President Herbert Hoover, under whom the economic crisis began. A Sicilian peasant shows an American officer the direction in which the German troops retreated. The photo was taken in 1943 during the Sicilian campaign of the Second World War. This operation became a key one for the Allies. It opened the way for the liberation of Italy from the fascist regime. An early example of a camper at the beginning of the 20th century is a car with an attached tent, allowing travelers to stop for the night right on the way. Such structures became the forerunners of modern mobile homes, RV, which appeared more than 115 years ago and turned into full-fledged mobile homes. 2 former prisoners of the Santo Tomas internment camp in the Philippines, February 1945. They spent 4 years in captivity under the control of the Japanese army and were released by American troops. The front page of the British newspaper Daily Mirror on July 21, 1969 reports on the landing of a man on the moon. Neil Armstrong became the first person to set foot on the surface of the moon during the Apollo 11 mission. An advertisement for Fort Pitt beer on a house in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 1935. The Fort Pitt Brewing Company operated from 1906 to 1957. And was one of the largest breweries in the region during the heyday of local brewing. Iceberg in the North Atlantic, April 1912. Traces of red and black paint are visible on its surface, which is why it was considered the iceberg that sank the Titanic. Betsy Ross House, Philadelphia. Photographs from 1900 and 2010 show the building where, according to legend, the first American Star-Spangled Revolutionary banner was sewn. A 1919 cartoon predicts pocket telephones and shows how calls will bother people in the most uncomfortable situations, in the rain, on a train, at a concert, or even during a wedding. One-night cough syrup from the early 20th century contained alcohol, cannabis, chloroform, and morphine. Such formulations were then legally sold as medicines for coughs and colds. Over time, they were banned due to the high danger and habituation. Advertising in the middle of the 20th century with the slogan, "I hope the lead I'm mining will be used in your paint," looks creepy today because the lead in the paint turned out to be extremely toxic and was later banned. Soldiers of the 369th Infantry Regiment of the USA, nicknamed Harlem Hellfighters. During World War I, they spent 191 days on the front line, longer than any other American unit, suffering thousands of casualties, but becoming famous for their incredible bravery. Students of one of the Canadian boarding schools for Indigenous children. This system, which has been in operation for more than 160 years, has forcibly isolated about 150,000 children from their families and culture. The last school closed only in 1997. Morocco became one of the first countries to recognize the independence of the United States, opening its ports to American ships in 1787. In 1786, a friendship treaty was signed, which is still in force today. A fire at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in New York City on March 25, 1911, claimed the lives of 146 workers, most of whom were young immigrants. The tragedy marked a turning point for occupational health and safety reforms. In 1944-1945, Japan launched about 9,300 Fugo paper balloons, with bombs aimed across the Pacific Ocean to North America. Only about 300 such devices have reached the USA, Canada, and Mexico. On January 6, 1985, Rome was paralyzed due to an unusual snowfall. The city was covered with a layer of snow, about 20 centimeters thick, which became a rare phenomenon for the Italian capital. From 1916 to 1917, the U.S. Army conducted a Mexican expedition against Pancho Villa after his raid on the city of Columbus. They failed to capture him, which only increased tensions between the United States and Mexico. From the late 19th century to the 1930s, the United States witnessed the Coal Wars, fierce labor conflicts between miners and companies in Appalachia and Colorado. Workers fought for wages and working conditions, often resorting to armed clashes. Ernest Shackleton's Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition, 1914-1917, was conceived as the first crossing of Antarctica, but turned into a legendary story of survival. After the Endurance ship was crushed by the ice, Shackleton managed to save the entire crew, ensuring their return home. A rare shot from the filming of Mary Poppins, 1964, in which Julie Andrews prepares for the role behind the scenes. The film became a cult film and earned the actress an Oscar for Best Actress. An Unusual Rule in the Hotel, 1926. A notice on the wall warns guests that snoring is prohibited. For those who are addicted to night noises, relocation to other floors was proposed. Tulsa Outrage, 1917. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, members of the Knights of Liberty organization attacked arrested IWW union members. They were taken out of the city, subjected to ramming and feathering. The local media approved of the action, but the national press condemned the violence. The Statue of Liberty under restoration, 1984. The monument was surrounded by scaffolding during a large-scale renovation before its centennial in 1986. The project included structural reinforcements, replacement of the torch, and preservation measures to extend the statue's durability. Mark 15 thermonuclear bomb lost near Tybee Island, 1958. The weapon was jettisoned into Wassaw Sound after a mid-air collision between a B-47 bomber and an F-86 fighter during a training mission. Despite extensive searches, the 7,600-pound bomb was never recovered. The Zimmerman Telegram, 1917. This secret German message offered Mexico an alliance and the return of Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico if it joined the war against the United States. Its interception and exposure by British intelligence pushed the U.S. closer to entering World War I. An advertisement from the early 20th century promoted the smoker's robot, a device designed for people who smoked in bed. It collected ash, sparks, and cigarette butts automatically to reduce fire risks and protect bedding and furniture. Sold for $2.65, it was marketed as both practical and gift-worthy. Early 20th century German postcard depicts a rare female version of Krampus, the folkloric figure known for punishing the wicked. Instead of targeting children, this variant is shown disciplining adult men, reversing the traditional myth. Friends, I have a second channel with even more interesting vintage photos. I left a link in the description and in the comments. I will be very glad of your support.